It all begins in the high cloud of the heavens, where a calm cat takes his world to a floating island on top of the world. He falls in love with another black cat, and they eventually get married. As a result, the world is divided into two: the floating kingdom of the white and the dark and black kingdom of the black. The Queen of Light heads the floating island of the white, while the King of Darkness heads the dark island of the black. The world survives with a balance that the whites remain on their floating island and the blacks are on the ground. On the ground, the world is battling with a violent master named Baal, and a young nameless boy comes out to meet his elders, who ask him if he is prepared for the job for the day and how they are going to hunt and get a meal for all the members of the community. Hopefully, they will be able to return with meals. Suddenly, a man comes to announce that the entire gate is under attack and the monsters of darkness have attacked. The men come out in large numbers with all their weapons, and the women bring their rakes to fight. They ask the little boy to take all the children away to the outskirts of the town, as there is a cave where they can all hide for safety. He swings into action, gathers all the kids, and takes them away. Unfortunately, he is too weak to safeguard all the kids, so all he has left are just 2 kids. These kids are siblings, and one of them gets attacked by the monster, and she is injured. He carries her with her injury and tries to get to the cave with her, but when he isn't aware, a monster sneaks in behind him and tries to attack him. The last boy, while trying to protect his siblings, decides to sacrifice himself for the greater good. He goes to the monster and gets killed while he tells the young boy to take his sister to safety and let him die. Eventually, the entire village is in ruins and no one is there again. The young boy finds it difficult to think about life. He has lost all that is to life, and he doesn't think anything worthwhile could come out of life again. As a result, he starts digging a hole. On the other hand, an older and weak man walks into the city. Looking at his map, he considers that there are some nearby cities where he could spend his night, but when he gets closer, he sees that there is not one city left there again. He sees the young boy in a hole and asks him about the nearby cities. The boy asks him where he is going and tells him that there is no city existing again and all of the towns are now ruins and they have been destroyed. He is shocked. He asks the older man if it is true that their city is protected by the King of Darkness, and why the King of Darkness has watched and looked at them until they are all destroyed. This older man doesn't believe in the integrity of the King of Darkness. The reason for this he will reveal later. Regardless, he tells the boy that the kingdom is under the King of Darkness. He sees that the boy is digging a hole and asks him why he is doing that. The boy tells the man not to ask him any questions and says even if he explains to the man won't understand what he is going through. He says what he is doing may look worthless to anyone, but that is the only way he can make himself feel better. The man insists that he wants to know why he is doing that, and he tells the man that he wants to get closer to light. The kingdom of white is in the sky, and he feels that the deep hole will be easier for light to penetrate than the floor. The man tells him to stop digging. He tells the boy that he is hungry and hasn't eaten, so he should stop stressing before he faints. The boy says he can't faint as he has been getting quality sleep. What is quality sleep without food? The man throws him a loaf of bread and he grabs it and eats it with all efficiency. He almost chokes on the food and the man throws him water. He is so excited and happy. The man asks him to come out and rest, but when he refuses, he throws him a sword. The man asks him why he is digging a hole when he could do his best to help the situation. He believes it isn't his place to help, and he can barely do that. The man introduces himself as Skiers and asks this boy for his name, but the boy says he doesn't have a name. Everyone calls him anything they want to call him, so Skiers can call him anything he wants. Skiers also brings out his sword and starts to fight. The boy wonders what Skiers is doing, and if Skiers intends to teach him how to fight because he doesn't want to learn how many monsters he can fight alone. Skiers tells him that no one is there to save him. The boy also realizes that he can't fight against Skiers and tries to stop, but Skiers wonders why he took the sword in the first place. Skiers eventually stops the fight and says he doesn't know the end would be so blissful. The boy asks how he knows he doesn't want to fight again. The boy says he still wants to fight Skiers, but Skiers informs him that it is the end of his life. He further explains that he is the Prince of Darkness, and he had fought the King of Darkness to take over the kingdom's leadership because he has figured that things aren't going the way they should. However, he couldn't defeat the King of Darkness, and he had been weakened, so he was looking for a great place to die. And he didn't know he would get such a blissful end with the young boy. He throws his sword at the boy and says he has chosen him as the next Prince of Darkness and King. He tells him to go to the city and visit his mansion, and whosoever sees that sword with him will acknowledge him. The boy refuses to go, but he says he has seen his younger self in that boy. He tells him that the world isn't the way it should be, and he needs someone to help him change the world. He also informs him that a great knight is in his quarters named Valus. If he proves himself to be great, Valus will follow him. Also, Valus is very loyal to whosoever he wants, and if Valus offers to go with him, Valus will follow him till the end of the world. Skiers dies, and the young boy journeys to the city alone. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Whites also suffers violence. Warriors and monsters from the Kingdom of Darkness have been sent to them to kill them, and all of their armies, including the Queen of Light herself, Queen Iris, and the Mage and the Head of Night, Shima, Fuse, and some other notable warriors join the fight while begging for support from the Protector of the Runes. Just as the war finishes, Fuse returns home and meets his younger brother Theo, who is excited to see him, and Shima also motivates all their warriors and tells them they should rest and prepare for their next war. She leaves and meets with Fuse, and they enter the house to talk about Iris. Fuse asks Shima if she has gotten her powers from the tiara on her head, and if she thinks Iris will be able to defeat the King of Darkness with her powers. They admit she is powerful, but she can't exhaust herself because if she does, she may lose her life. Fuse advises Shima not to have that conversation in public, as it may be defamation to the queen. Also, Iris's servant sees her after the war, and they see she looks weak and tired. They ask if she has exhausted her powers and advise her to rest, but she can't find sleep, so she goes to the progenitor ruin to beg for help and protection. Sharma comes to meet her. Iris calls Shima a big sister and reveals that before she contested for the Queen of Light against Shima, she and Shima trained together, and Shima was one of the people who helped her get stronger. Shima reminds Iris that she is now the king and the one who had won the fight between them, so she is sure she deserves the position. She asks Iris if she remembers the last Queen of Light and how smiling her face was when she watched the competition. They both admit that memories about the Queen of Light are fading, and they all hope that the war will end fast and the King of Darkness will have a change of mind. Iris says she knows that when the next King of Darkness comes, the world will become a better place, but Shima asks her if she still thinks she will be alive by the time the next King of Darkness comes. Iris reveals that she doesn't care about being alive or not. She hopes the world will one day become safe for everyone. Later, the young boy arrives at the kingdom and asks for the mansion of Skiers. The knight he finds by the door asks him where he has found that sword, and before he explains, the knight starts to fight him. He immediately discovers that the knight could be Valus, and he asks the knight if he is Valus. Valus admits his name and asks about Skiers, but he says Skiers is dead. Valus gets violent and attacks the boy, and the boy falls. He goes closer and tells him he knows the boy couldn't have killed Skiers because the boy is weak. The boy introduces himself as the Prince of Darkness. The next king, Valus, laughs at him, asking him if he thinks he can do all that while being in the ruins like that, but the boy courageously tells him that he can do it even if he is in the ruins, as he knows his powers and capabilities. Valus believes in him and promises to follow him. He also leaves him in Skiers' quarters. In the Kingdom of White, the guard announces that their western gate is under attack by the Ball. Iris tells Shima to contact the other mages to fight, and also orders Fuse to take the knights to battle. Shima uses her tiara to reach all the mages, who also get her warning and wake up to fight. They set out to their positions. Ball looks forward to fighting Iris, and he looks around the entire city for her. When he sees some of the mages, he tries to scare them by asking them to just send Iris to him instead of killing themselves by fighting him. They set their magics at him, but none of their attacks affect him. He fights them first, destroying the entire rooftop where they are staying. He leaves there and sees some knights led by Fuse. He goes to meet them and again asks them not to lose their lives by fighting with him, and they should bring Iris. They refuse to answer, and they shoot arrows at him. He is about to step in on them when Lord Alancha appears to fight on their behalf. They appreciate Alancha and say they will return to the city and safeguard the other villagers. When Ball sees Alancha, he recognizes Alancha as the head of the elves who command 3 different spirits: fire, water, and earth. Alancha asks his spirits to fight, and Ball also anticipates their attacks. When they attack, Ball compliments them that they are doing great, but says they aren't enough. He tries to wage his attack, and when Alancha sees his capacity, he screams for his spirits to return. He realizes that Ball is stronger than he had imagined, and he starts sweating and thinks of how he would survive. Fortunately, he sees Iris. Iris stands by the wall, and she sees some of her citizens dead. The last surviving citizen prays for her, and she goes to fight. She warns Ball that if she fights him, she won't allow him to stay, but Ball is also ready for all her attacks. Meanwhile, on Fu's way to the kingdom, he confronts 2 men, and he assumes that they are knights from the kingdom of blacks. He confronts them, asking why they are cowards, and they use the fact that Ball is fighting them to attack. These men insist they aren't knights and are just deserters looking for a good place to rest. He asks them to drop their sword, and they do. They also kneel before him. Suddenly, the power of darkness surrounds them, and they pick their swords back. Fuse kills one of them, and he commands his knights to fight the remaining. Iris struggles to fight Ball, who turns out to be strong too. She decides to exhaust all her powers, but Alantes warns her of what could be the result. She stops herself, and Ball feels embarrassed that he is fighting her without her full energy and leaves, hoping to return when she is ready for a real fight. At the Kingdom of Blacks, Valis meets the King of Darkness. However, the king isn't around. The knight who had led the attacks in the Kingdom of White that day comes to give a report, and he reports that they have to stop fighting. He complains that he has lost a knight that day, and he doesn't think the people of Blacks are just savages who can fight anyone at any time. Before Valis could respond, the King of Darkness arrives and attacks the knight, killing him. When he sits, Valis tells him he shouldn't have defiled himself by taking blood on his hand, as he would have killed the man for the king if the king wanted it. The king claims there is no reason why the Kingdom of Blacks remains on Earth, and the Kingdom of White is in the heavens. The 2 kingdoms can't coexist in the world, and he won't give up until he is sure that the Kingdom of White no longer exists and that the world is covered with darkness. Valis admits the king is right, but says it's not a good strategy if they keep losing men. They will also have a problem, which is the king of egoism, Ball. Valis returns home and meets the young boy, the Prince of Darkness. The Prince of Darkness asks him where he is coming from, and he says he is coming from the palace of the King of Darkness. The prince had assumed that Valis was only loyal to him, but Valis explains that he is loyal to the king and his successors, and he doesn't have to be scared, as he is loyal to him too. The prince tells Valis that he would like to train with a sword and learn how to fight. He claims he doesn't deserve to be king if he can't defeat Valis, but Valis informs him that fighting isn't his major aim, but he has to read. Valis brings some books to his table and tells him to read, asking him how he wants to become the king if he doesn't learn a boy farming and other things, and if he wants his people to starve. He also tells the prince that if he wants the dignity of the king, he has to polish his words too. He accepts to train the prince too and informs him that other successors seek for the throne, and he has to be outstanding if he wants the throne. They start their training, and the prince learns considerably fast. On the other hand, in the forest, the gray-green demoness Lady Grossa walks with her knights. She is looking for the prince, and she is tired of searching, wondering why the prince will be in a place like that. She pauses to rest, and suddenly, some monsters attack them. The knights try to get into action by fighting the monsters, but she tells them not to worry and goes to fight alone. She defeats them with one attack, and all her knights praise her. While she is engrossed in the praises, another monster comes at her. The monster is too close for her to defend herself, and she doesn't know what to do. Suddenly, the prince arrives and kills the monster. He introduces himself as the prince, and she wonders why the prince is in a place as far as that. He tells her he is training and the forest isn't too far from his home. Since she has nothing much to say again, he tries to leave. Grossa is so engrossed by how handsome he looks that it takes her knights to call her back to reality before she recalls she was searching for him, and she wants to tell him something. She calls him back and asks if she can see him, and they talk. She informs him about a competition between him and all the other successors and tells him that if he wins, he will be considered the real prince and he will have the sword, the great sword of the blacks. He looks at the sword he has gotten from Skiers, and Grossa wonders if he has a special attachment to the sword. Regardless, he plans to join the fight. In the Kingdom of White, Iris returns and sees her kingdom in ruins. He calls for help for the injured ones, and Shima arrives. Shima informs her that when Fuse and the knights returned to safeguard the city, they were confronted by human warriors from the Kingdom of Blacks, which caused their loss. Iris remains absent-minded in her palace while thinking about the responsibilities that have been kept on her shoulders and how she will manage them. Shima meets her and calls her attention repeatedly before she can reply. She tells her she is lost in thoughts and asks her what she thinks. She also says that it could be that the former queen was also lost in thoughts when they thought she looked peaceful. She reports to Iris that she will manage the reconstruction of the destroyed city, and Iris asks her to do it well. When she leaves, Iris thinks about the former queen. She recalls that when they were younger before she became the queen, she used to wake up very early and stand by the city to pray for the Kingdom of Whites. One morning, Shima comes to meet her, and she asks her if she is still an early bird. Shima says she can't be an early bird because she enjoys sleeping, and Iris reminds her that she has much more responsibility and must take care of her brothers, Theo and Fuse. Shima mocks that they are enough responsibility and more than enough for her, and she will give it to Iris if she wants. They laugh, and Iris asks Shima if she knows what it means to be the Queen of Light. Shima says she has never thought about it, but Iris wonders what exactly are the burden and the responsibility of the Queen of Light. They return to the quarters where they see the Queen of Light. They appreciate how gracious she looks, and they both anticipate their battle and competition to be the Queen of Light. They both hope you do their best to win the battles, but Iris looks disturbed. Shima asks her if she doubts her ability or if the position scares her, but Iris says no. She returns the question to Shima, who admits that she usually feels like the responsibility would be too much for her, and she thinks it is tedious to be the queen. The queen must remain in the palace, and she must not go out. Shima doesn't think she has the ability for such a boring lifestyle, but Iris says it may not be that boring, and they don't know if their queen sneaks out sometimes. Shima begs to differ, and they go out. She asks if Iris would come for dinner at her place that evening and says Fuse has been looking forward to the dinner since it has been a while since they have eaten together. They go out to cut wild vegetables and they take them to Shima's home where they eat and enjoy. After the meal, Iris appreciates them for the meal and Theo asks her if she will visit again. They joke about it and Fuse sees Iris home. On their way, Iris appreciates him for the food, and he also tells Iris that it is well deserved since she brings vegetables for them too. She reminds him that they could get the vegetables in the forest, but he insists her own is sweeter than the ones in the forest. She asks him if he knows the responsibility of a queen, and he says no, but claims his responsibility as the knight is to ensure he protects the queen. The following day, Iris walks around the kingdom and some monsters attack her. She tries to run, but she can't escape, so she fights them, and she wins. Suddenly, she hears the voice of the Goddess of Light. She tells her that the Queen of Light is the last born of the baddest, and she must take a walk of loneliness. That day, Iris promises she will take that walk no matter what. On the other hand, Valis informs the prince that he has to fight in that competition according to their family doctrine. He tells him he is going to the king, but he is sure the prince will win, and he trusts the prince. The competition starts, and Grossa announces that the competition will start with a war between all the princes and monsters, and the last two princes will have a duel. They release the monsters, and during the fight, the prince helps one of the other princes so she won't die. The other wonder why he would help someone in a competition, but he says it is just because he doesn't want her to die. The lady doesn't even appreciate his kind gestures and tells him to leave her. The fight continues, and another great monster comes in that only the prince can kill. Eventually, the prince qualifies with another prince named Adele. Adele follows him to the dressing room in anticipation of the next fight. He asks the prince why he had saved the girl, and the prince reveals it is because he doesn't want her to die. Adele tells him that there is no way he would not want to kill someone if he wants to become the king of darkness, and he has to be fine with people dying. The prince insists that if killing is the only way for him to become the king, he will rather find another way. The second part of the competition starts, and he overcomes Adele. However, he doesn't kill Adele, and Adele asks him why. Angrily, Adele takes his sword again and continues the fight, declaring that if he gets an opportunity to kill the king, he will do it without thinking twice. Unfortunately for him, he gets none, and the prince wins the fight. He takes the great sword of the black, and he walks out with Adele and Grossa. Adele introduces himself, and they see Valis at the front. Valis doesn't even need to ask for the report of the competition. Adele asks Valis why he had visited, and Valis tells them he has a message for them from the king. The two qualified successors are to take a message to the Kingdom of White for the king. Meanwhile, the prince also has the same question Iris had in mind. He asks himself repeatedly what is the work of the King of the Blacks as Iris takes her sword and goes to look at her kingdom. They begin their journey to the Kingdom of White, and they take a boat that is flying in the sky. The boat riders do not even make their journey easier as they keep talking about how difficult it may be for them to arrive at the Kingdom of White and how their boat may be flown with magic, which makes them magicians. Since the ship doesn't even have a window, the guests, Grossa, Adele, and the prince, stay on top of the boat to look at their journey closer. When they almost arrive at their destination, Grossa wonders how the mission will go and if they can deliver the letter. She informed them that even if the world contains only these two kingdoms, the kingdoms are at war, and no matter how it seems, they aren't friends, so it would be insane for them to pretend to be fine. She asks the prince if he thinks he will be able to deliver the message, and the prince says that even if he doesn't think he is capable, he thinks he can do the work of an envoy and he will deliver the letter. Adele interferes. He tells the prince that he doesn't have good communication skills and is somewhat even shy. So, what makes him think he could deliver the message? The prince feels he can do just that, and Adele reminds him that the two kingdoms are at war. He offers that since he is better at communication, and the war the communication goes would determine if they will return home or not, then he is offering to be the convoy while the prince pretends to be his guard. That seems like a great idea to the three of them, and the prince appreciates him for his selfless efforts. They arrive at the Kingdom of White, and Fuse welcomes them. He brings out his sword at them, and the prince brings out his sword too. Adele interferes and apologizes to Fuse for the way the prince had behaved. He tells Fuse that they are only there to deliver a message to their queen and do not mean to cause any trouble. Fuse wonders if he is obliged to collect the letter from them, and they try to beg Fuse that their queen had been informed of their visit before the visit, and they mean no harm. He begs Fuse to drop his weapons, but Fuse refuses, claiming the people of the Blacks are cowards who would do anything to get what they want. Adele tries to convince Fuse by telling him that they aren't all like that in the Kingdom of the Blacks, and even the citizens are suffering for the behaviors of their egoist king who believes he has the world on his hands. They can't do anything about it. He can kill even his citizens, let alone the people of the whites, and Adele also says that if the king dies and another king takes over, the world will be more peaceful for all of them to live. Fuse thinks about how helpless the knights that have attacked them were. He considers that the people are helpless, but declares that whatever the people of the blacks are going through isn't his business and they can enjoy it. He eventually collects the letter from Adele and sends it to Iris while he refuses to follow Adele and the prince into the palace. Adele keeps trying to convince him with words, and eventually Adele wins him over and he invites them. He tells them to drop their weapons in front of the palace and he takes them inside. When they keep murmuring on the way, he asks them to keep shut, telling them they are guests and have to be right there. He also tells them they will speak officially to everyone, including the queen. Fuse asks Adele how many days they may stay there, and Adele tells him that they could leave that day, depending on how their negotiation goes, or they should leave the following day because he knows the negotiation won't go that easily. Eventually, they meet Iris. She looks at the prince, and even if he is there disguised as a guard, she still feels something different about him. She tells them she has read the letter sent by their king, and the king is asking the two countries to join together and destroy Baal. She feels that if Baal eventually leaves, the king will put all his want for blood on her kingdom and destroy them. She admits that Baal is actually disturbing the two kingdoms and they need a long-lasting solution, but she doesn't think joining hands with the blacks is the best idea. The prince interferes and tells her that the war on the white will only continue until the present king leaves the seat. Adele is shocked that he has said that, but Adele has to cover up for him, so he says that the present king has spent many years and is planning on resigning, so there will be peace on the white soon. When the meeting finishes, Fuse takes them to their room and tells them to remain as guests. Before he leaves, the prince asks him what kind of person Iris is, but Fuse feels the question is insane and warns the prince never to mention Iris's name with his mouth again. He apologizes to her, and they continue to their room. Meanwhile, the ship returns home, and the riders wonder if the envoy returned safely. They claim they had assumed that the whites would kill them immediately they got there, but they think Adele has a sweet mouth and the negotiation should go fine. Someone sends a message to Groza that Valis has asked her to visit. When she returns to the city, she visits Valis, and on her way, some men see her, and they talk about her strength. They say she can watch anyone around her, and they are sure she is being called to match the demon that has planned to attack them soon. In the room, the prince asks Adele what is wrong with him, but Adele directs the question at the prince. He asks why the prince has been interfering in their neogitans and tells him that the people of the whites do not like them, and they believe that the blacks are always at fault, so the prince can't keep taunting them. The prince begs to differ as he claims Iris is different, and he has seen her as a peace-loving person. The following day, Iris calls a meeting with them. She tells them she has thought about their message, but she has a question. She says she wants to direct the question to the prince, which shocks Adele, and he tells Iris that the prince is just a guard. Iris insists she wants him to answer the questions, and she asks him what he thinks the black thinks about the alliance. Her advisor warns her that the question isn't a question she should ask a guard, but she asks him to answer, so the prince tells her that the blacks have been affected by Baal. He has killed several of them, and he thinks if their alliance is formed, it will prevent further deaths, so they are in support. The following day, she calls a meeting with them, and she accepts the alliance deal. Fuse stands by the palace and watches the empty seat of Iris. She has gone to the Kingdom of Blacks to join the fight, and she has left him there to safeguard the city. At that moment, Shima arrives. She walks inside the palace and tries to deliver the report of the reconstruction that she had gone to watch over to Iris, but she sees that Iris isn't in her chair. She asks Fuse where Iris is, and he tells her Iris has gone to the Kingdom of Blacks. He gives her the letter that he had gotten from Adele and the prince, and when she reads it, she reveals that a part of the letter had shown that the envoy is to be held captive in the Kingdom of White until Iris comes back, so they can be sure that the blacks will release Iris safely. As a result, Fuse tells Shima that he is remaining at the palace to safeguard the palace in case Adele and the prince want to do any evil act. She also reports that the reconstruction is going quite well. Fuse tells her he thinks the envoy does not mean any bad, and they have just been resting. Shima is excited to meet the envoys, but she says she is tired, so she asks Fuse to introduce them to each other later. In the Kingdom of Blacks, Iris arrives and flies around. A merchant sells to his buyer, and after the buyer leaves, he feels something weird around the city. He feels something bad wants to happen that day, and at about the same time, he sees Iris flying by the sky, and he tells his wife to pack the shop as it is better if they aren't in that situation. The people of the Blacks, along with their knights and mages headed by Grossa and Valis, get set to fight Baal. They aren't sure if the negotiation with Iris is successful, and they don't know if they can win. Regardless, Valis encourages his people that Baal, the king of egoism, the one who defies the order of balance in the two worlds, has come again. And as he usually does, he would destroy their entire city at whim, and he would kill most of them. He has no reason for the war, and he enjoys destroying, so they are meant to counter him and save their city. He admits that it may be hard for them to do so, but it is their responsibility to fight for their city, and they will do just that. The war starts, and some black monsters are sent to Baal. They hit him, but he uses his hands to send them away, telling them they are too small to fight against someone like him. He also confronts Grossa and her mages. Grossa throws arrows at him, and his metal body breaks away all their arrows. She is scared, but she encourages herself to be fine, and she tells her mages to send the next shot of arrows. Baal laughs at them, telling them things as stupid as those can't penetrate him. He goes to destroy the building they are standing on, but Grossa luckily survives by jumping off the building. They also send some pillars of fire at him, and he admits that it is a great plan, but those pillars aren't enough to kill him because he can fly around them. Valis tells him they have more powers in their hands and seeks to attack him physically, but he says it is about time that he fights back, and he is about to release an attack that will destroy the city. The King of Darkness arrives first. He clears all his citizens from the battleground as he knows that if the fight continues, they will die. Baal appreciates him for his great acts and says it isn't enough. He calls Baal the King of Egoism, and Baal asks him why he has given him such a name. He claims no other name can befit Baal, as he is nothing but a demon who defies the balance of life. Baal doesn't care about the name. He claims he doesn't like to be called a demon or a monster, but he also doesn't think the King of Darkness deserves the pleasure of naming him. He advises the King of Darkness to try to get light into his life if he knows he wants to fight. As the fight, Iris arrives, bringing a white cuff to hold Baal. Baal never expected her to be there. He asks her what she is doing and mocks the King of Darkness for swallowing his pride and inviting Iris to fight on his behalf. The King of Darkness doesn't care. He claims all he cares about is the balance of the world, and if he gets it by destroying Baal, he will destroy Baal. He sets out to capture Baal into his eternal jail, but Baal wonders why he isn't killed instead. Baal figures out what the King of Darkness may want from him as he enters the jail. On the other hand, Iris has exhausted all her powers, and she barely has enough to travel back to the Kingdom of White. At the Kingdom of White, Adele meets Shiwa, and he teases her that he didn't expect that the head of mages in such a large community would be as pretty as that. She notices his flattering and stops him. Suddenly, the prince sees Iris flying weakly, and he runs to carry her before Shiwa and Fuse notice her coming. He drops her down, and Shiwa notices that she has exhausted her powers, so she instructs Fuse to take her to the palace and tells the prince and Adele to remain in their room. Shiwa notices that Iris has connected herself to the runes, taking her physical strength. While she cares for Iris, she asks Fuse to tell Adele and the prince the report of the war so they can return. In the prince room, he is disturbed about Iris's health, while Adele comes to tease him by saying he likes Shiwa and he knows the prince prefers Iris. The prince tells him they aren't in the best position to have that kind of conversation, and as he is about to leave, Fuse comes in. The prince asks Fuse about Iris, but Fuse screams at him that he has no right to ask about Iris. He tells them Iris will be fine and reports that the war has ended, so they can return. That night, Grossa walks home tired and exhausted. She suddenly meets Valis, who tells her that sealing Baal off has done much good to their kingdom, and he knows she is tired, but she still has a message to deliver to the Kingdom of Right. He gives her a letter to take to the Kingdom of White, and as she leaves, she remembers the Prince of Darkness. Groza walks away, pissed that they didn't even allow her to take a little rest from the war she had just finished fighting, and they are shipping her off to the White immediately. She, however, reconsiders her anger when she thinks about the fact that the prince is in the Kingdom of White, and that when she gets to the Kingdom of White, she will see him there. It is morning in the Kingdom of White, and the White Star Tanukis enjoy themselves by flying in the sky happily. The Queen Iris has gotten better, and she calls Adele and the prince. She declares that the war is over, and Adele appreciates her for joining the war, but she claims she doesn't have the right to take that much glory as she barely did much, and she only lent a little of her power while the blacks lost a lot. There was the destruction of both life and properties, and she hopes that they will recover soon. Adele asks her not to worry. He tells her that the blacks are filled with two different species. The first are the humans, and the second are the monsters. The monsters can take any fight as they can regenerate. He also says the monster enjoys the Kingdom of Blacks better because they enjoy the darkness. She admits that she knows about their monsters and prays that when they are recreated, they get the spirit of light. Adele appreciates how she takes the people of Black without discrimination, and he promises that when he returns to his kingdom, he will speak to the king and beg him to cease his war on the whites for a while so they can live in peace. Since he has earlier told them that the King of Darkness kills anyone who goes against him or advises him, Fuse asks him if he is sure that is a great idea as he may lose his life in the process, but he believes he should try than do nothing, so he will give it a try. At that moment, a messenger announces that another messenger has come from the Kingdom of Darkness. They ask Iris what they should do, and she asks them to allow the messenger into the palace. Groza arrives, and she apologizes to Iris for coming into her kingdom without prior notice. Iris asks her why she had visited, and she reports that she has a message from the king and begs Iris to read the message. When Iris reads it, she sees that the King of Darkness is asking for an extension of the peace between the two kingdoms so the Kingdom of Darkness can have enough time to rebuild its kingdom and return to normal. Fuse tells Adele that at least he would put his peace talk on hold and enjoy the peace. Iris accepts the proposal, and she offers to take the guests around the Kingdom of White so they can understand them well. As she is about to leave the palace, Shima is concerned about her health and asks her if she feels better enough to walk, but she claims she is good. They walk out of the palace and they see Theo by the tree. He greets his siblings and asks them who the three guests are. They tell him they are guests from the Kingdom of Darkness, and he gets so scared that he hides behind Shima. They tell him that the people are good and they won't do anything to him, so he comes out and admits that there could be good people from the Kingdom of Darkness too. They get to talk, and they ask him what he is doing there. He reveals that he is trying to heal the Star Tanuki, who is injured. He goes there and uses magic to heal the Star Tanuki, which makes Fuse ask him where he learned that. He tells Fuse that Shima had taught him, but Fuse contends that he shouldn't be learning to be a mage when he said he wanted to be a knight. He jokingly replies that he no longer wants to be a knight because if he does, he will become the commander and degrade Fuse to the vice commander. They laugh at his jokes as they watch the Star Tanukis play around. Groza comments that their white Star Tanukis are cute and pretty. Also, they are obedient, while the ones they have in the Kingdom of Blacks are just a nuisance, although they are cute too. Iris is excited to meet them, but they tell her there is nothing cute about them, and they are just black and ugly. Speaking of blacks, the whites tell the blacks that they are also always on black clothes. From their hair to their legs, it is black, making them different. The blacks also tell the whites that they are also all putting on white clothes, so they decide to exchange wares and see how comfortable their clothes would be on each other. Fuse changes clothes with Adele, and they both look good in them, while Shima goes to change wear with Groza. However, in the changing room, they see that Iris wants to participate too, but since she can't give her clothes to a guest, Shima suggests that she wear Groza's clothes while Groza wears Shima's clothes. They both come out beautifully, and they ask the prince to choose who he likes. And he says they are both beautiful. They return to Shima's house to play chess, and Adele wins Fuse several times. Since it is getting late at night, Shima suggests that Fuse take the guests to their quarters, but Iris refuses because she enjoys their company. She complains that she hasn't had that much fun in a while, and even Theo says that since she became the queen, she couldn't come to their house for dinners again, and she has to remain at the palace to take care of the kingdom. As a result, Adele suggests that they keep playing until Fuse wins, to which Fuse disagrees because he knows he may not win. They keep playing around until their stomach makes hunger signs, and Shima offers to cook for them. Adele anticipates her food, hoping that it will be better than the ones he had been eating at the place. However, when they taste it, they complain that it needs more salt and it is bland. Grossa has brought one of the meals from the blacks, and when she gives it to the people of white, they complain that the food is too salty. They realize that if they want to coexist in peace, they will need more compromise. The prince takes the food from the blacks and adds it to the stew from the whites and eats it. When he does, he sees it tastes so great. The others try it too, and they love it. They eat the combination of the two stew until they finish the entire pot. They talk about more food, and Fuse confesses that another food is better than the one they had just eaten, which is the green wild that Iris plucks herself. Green wild is a common food also available in the Kingdom of Blacks, but the prince says that he would like to taste the green wild in the Kingdom of Whites because he knows it would enjoy so much light than there and may be more delicious. When Iris hears that, she asks that they pluck the green wild together, but they remind her that it is late, so they decide to do it the following day. However, the prince finds it difficult to sleep that night. He stands by the corridor, and Grossa comes to meet him. She asks him what he thinks about it, and if he can tell her. He confides in her that he thinks Iris is just an ordinary person without issues, and she also tells him that he is just like Iris. He is an ordinary person, so he deserves to be the king of darkness. She hopes that he will soon before the king and promises him her support whenever he needs it. He appreciates her, and she tells him to sleep early because they will pluck green wild the following day. On the other hand, Iris also finds sleeping difficult and keeps thinking about how adventurous her day is. The following morning, all the crew headed by Iris to the forest to get greens. She is so excited that she keeps running and is in a hurry. Shima says there is no reason to hurry as the vegetables aren't leaving for anyone, but she claims she is excited and wants to be there. They get to the forest, and the blacks wonder if that is where they pick their greens. Iris tells them that there are several places for them to get greens, but she prefers that place because the greens there get better lighting, and they are better. She shows them how they can collect the greens, and Adele suggests that they should split into groups to make the picking more fun. The others accept the suggestion, and Fuse dreams that he will go to pick greens with Iris, and Grossa also dreams that he will be able to pick with the prince. However, when they ask Adele how he intends to share their adventure, he plans that they should share into a group of a white and a black so they will get to meet each other well and better. Grossa doesn't seem comfortable with the opinion, but she eventually accepts since she has no choice. They wonder how they will pick the groups, and Fuse insists that for safety, he has to follow Iris. Iris butts in and tells them that before they do that, she has some things that she has to inform them regarding picking greens. They have to be careful to ensure that some of the greens they are collating aren't too grown so they won't be bitter. She shows them how they will cut the trees and get the greens, and they realize that she is the best among them. So they plan that it is preferable that she doesn't join any of the groups and she remains there as an independent viewer. As a result, Adele groups with Shima, Grossa groups with Fuse, and the prince groups with Theo. They proceed to search for greens. While they search, Adele tries to get familiar with Shima, but she doesn't feel receptive to his kind gestures. When he tells her they have to get familiar with each other, she admits, and they start searching. They see a green that Adele thinks looks very nice, but Shima doesn't know if it is edible or not. Adele feels they don't have to be sure, and they could just pluck it and confirm later. But Shima insists it is better they call Iris and ask for her opinion before they pluck. Adele tells them they are so different in their city and they have the respect and the need to ask for the queen's opinion before doing most things, but Shima doesn't feel the same way. She thinks things like that are of personal opinion, which isn't compulsory. The prince also goes with Theo, and when they see a green that they aren't sure of, he calls Iris to confirm. She checks and tells them it is edible, so she tells them to pluck it. When Theo goes ahead, she asks the prince if she can remain with them and pluck with them, and he invites her. As they talk, he mistakenly touches her hands and immediately apologizes. Meanwhile, Fuse is at alert all through the entire day. He holds his sword, and his hand remains on his sword, which makes Grossa wonder why he is that scared. He tells her that he has to be conscious of his environment because of Iris and has to ensure she is fine. She goes ahead to check the others, and he tells her he thinks the blacks trust each other better and they aren't scared of each other. She confides in him that the reason she is like that is because she trusts the prince. She feels he has the ability to lead their city, and he can do it. She reminds herself of how she had listened to his conversation with Adele, and how he said if he had to kill and destroy people before he becomes the king, then he will have to find another means. She feels she resonates with his belief to create a new world, and that he can do it, which is why she is going to follow him until the end. They all finish plucking, and they gather their meals. Iris checks through, and she sees that most of them have edible meals, except some of them, like Fuse and Groza, who didn't call for Iris's suggestions and got inedible meals. Iris offers to cook for them, and Fuse is excited. She and the females go to wash the greens while the males gather wood. When they wash the greens, Grossa figures that they wash more deeply than the whites. According to her, the blacks have it soak over the night for the bitterness to leave, while the whites soak for some minutes. They tell her that it may be because of the pure soul. They leave Iris by the water. For the males, Theo suddenly goes missing, and they start to look for him. The prince runs to ask Iris if she knows where Theo is, and he slips and pushes her into the water and then falls on her. He immediately apologizes and asks her if she can find Theo. He informs him that Theo has left with Shima and Grossa. He apologizes for pushing her and helps her out of the water. They dry their body, and Theo later goes to meet Fuse. They meet together later, and they cook. When they start eating, the blacks admit that their greens are less bitter than that of the blacks, but they taste bland, while the whites insist that it is okay. Shima brings out salt and suggests that they should put little. When they do that, they all enjoy the meal. Fuse suggests that the envoy should tell their king about business transactions between the two countries to learn each other's food and clothing, but Iris says it has to transcend more than food. She thinks they should also be meeting together as she would like to be in their company one more time. Some days later, the king calls for the envoy to return to the city. Adele walks along the road with the prince and complains that the king is filled with so much urgency that he can't even allow them to remain there for a few days, and he has to complain that they have to leave in urgency. He sees Fuse before him, and Fuse asks why he is murmuring. He looks at him in fear, and Adele asks him if he is considering if he would be fine when he gets to the ground. He tells him that he doesn't have to be scared on his behalf, and he will surely be fine. Fuse reminds him of what they are to do when they return to the city of the blacks, and the first thing is for them to propose a trade agreement between the two kingdoms. Adele reassures Fuse that he will tell the king that the whites aren't bad people and they can live in balance. On the ship, the whites send different food items and other things for the blacks. Grossa coordinates as these things are taken onto the ship, and she thinks about how much she will miss them. Fuse gives Adele and the prince their swords back and leads them to the palace where they meet Iris. She is writing a letter proposing a trade pact between the two countries, and she begs them to deliver the letter. Adele reassures her they will give it to the king and asks her what balance means. She tells him balance is when the two kingdoms live in peace and harmony, but he laughs at her. He tells her there can't be that balance, and the gods didn't even create them for such a balance. To him, the people of the whites enjoy the bright light, which they don't even get in the black. They enjoy good food and protection, and they live in peace while the people of the blacks enjoy the worst of the gods. The gods didn't bestow them with good things, and they are not beneficiaries. Hence, the only balance can be if the black takes over the entire world. The black's power enters him, his horns increase, and he takes his sword to kill Iris. It is too close for any of the queen's guards to come to her defense, but before he succeeds, the prince brings out his sword and cuts Adele into two. Everyone is shocked. It takes them a while to understand what is happening, and the knights tell Fuse to seize and arrest the prince. He says he is a fool for believing that the envoy had their best interest in mind, and he puts all his anger on the prince. He starts hitting the prince and he kicks him, then calls for rope to arrest the prince. While they do that, Iris wonders if she is actually making the right decision, and she calls for them to wait, but no one answers her, and they take the prince to the prison. Groza wonders what is happening in the palace, and she waits for the prince, but the sailors tell her that they have to leave immediately because the envoys have been arrested and they don't know what has happened. After ordering the arrest of the prince, Fuse is angry at himself. He calls himself a fool for hoping things could have been different, and Shima comes to console him, telling him that they can't be sure of what had happened, and they weren't wrong for trusting the envoy. He complains that he is tired. He tells Shima that he is glad that there could be a little unity between the two countries and asks her if she really thinks balance is between opposition and fighting. He asks her if the knights must fight for eternity, but Theo interferes. Theo asks him why he is worried about the future that he can even be in, the future that no one knows. No one has lived till eternity, and he is sure they can't live till then too, so why be bothered? He tells them about a fight he had with his neighbors the day before, and even though the fight hasn't finished, he knows it will end soon because they can't keep fighting. He eventually walks out, and his siblings hope and pray that he won't grow up to be fighting these wars. On the other hand, Iris is disappointed. She thinks about what to do to bring balance and unity. Suddenly, God appears to her and tells her that to bring the balance and the unity she wants, she must ensure she knows what she can protect and protect it. In the prison, the prince wonders what he has done. He thinks about the way Fuse had attacked and hit him, and he says he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know if the king had secretly informed Adele to kill the queen, and if the king had done so, he was sure there was a reason, and he shouldn't have interfered. He doesn't know if he has made a good decision, and he is confused. Suddenly, he sees a white cat in front of his gate. The door suddenly opens, and the white cat calls him. He wonders if the cat wants to release him, and he follows the cat. By the road, the cat changes into a diamond with Iris. The sphere breaks, and he carries Iris. They talk, and Iris tells him how much she seeks for peace. He tells her he wants the same thing and informs her that he is the Prince of Darkness and the next successor of the King of Darkness. Iris tells him she has felt it, and she knows they want the same thing. He hopes that he can get a real balance and tells her to wait for him. He proceeds to return to the Kingdom of Blacks and hopes for unity. Iris walks away, thinking about him. She talks about how he was always there, but he was laid back. Immediately she saw him, she knew that he was the prince, but when she saw how he behaved and acted, she felt scared that he wouldn't actually be able to take the entire burden of the king as he should, and he couldn't be the real king. Regardless, she had felt she wouldn't get an opportunity to speak with him privately before he left, and she is glad that she could eventually speak with him. She remembers when he told her that together they would bring peace to the world, and he promised to help her. She hangs on to his promise and hopes that he will be able to fulfill his promise. The blacks start attacking the whites again, and Iris goes to fight. She finishes her fight and returns to the palace, where Shima and Fuse report that several monsters are lurking around their cities. They are everywhere, and they think they may attack at once. She tells them that they should tell both the knights and the mages to be on alert, and she would also be on her best duty. She would go to help any city that is under attack, but she knows that if she leaves, the central will be attacked, so she tells Fuse to hold the ground in the palace and protect them against such attacks. However, Fuse asks her for an excuse and says he needs to get a leave. That seems like an impossible mission because their country is at risk, and he can't leave as the commander of the night. He defends himself and reminds them that the queen has been injured since her last fight, and she hasn't fully recuperated. He says he wants to go out of his way and find a solution to the queen's illness, but he doesn't know how long it will take her. Although the reason he wants to leave seems great, it will be so much risk for them to let him go. They refuse to let him go, and the queen insists that she will get better and he doesn't have to worry himself about her. She tells them to train with their teams and ensure they are prepared for attack. Outside the palace, Fuse tells Shima that he really means the words he has said, and he needs to leave and get the solution to her illness, but Shima is also not in support of him leaving. She asks him who he intends to leave the knights with, and he asks if she can take the duty on her behalf. She wonders how she would lead the mages and the knights together and reminds him that it is impossible, but he asks if he can give the duty to Theo instead. That seems laughable because Theo is not even a knight, and he is a young boy. Shima assumes her brother is joking, and she leaves. Fuse keeps thinking about a good healing solution for Iris. Alantes notices that he is so disturbed and tells him he has a solution to his problem. He tells him the queen's body is alright, but her strength hasn't reunited with the powers she used to fight against Baal. As a result, she needs a place where the good energy that should heal her is in abundance, and if they bring her a portion, she will get healed immediately instead of waiting for the natural process. He claims to know a place that it exists, but he says the place is so risky that no one has been said to survive indeed. Fuse asks him if the place is so risky that the Almighty Knight, commander of the White, can't survive, and the Alantes of the Elves can't. Alantes tells them they could manage it, but wonders if the queen will allow him to leave during that crazy period. He lies to Alantes that Iris has allowed him to go, and they plan to leave immediately. On the other hand, Shima continues her drilling with the mages when one of the knights comes to tell her that Fuse is missing. She immediately goes to report to Iris and tells her she thinks Fuse has gone to find a solution to her health. She apologizes to Iris, but she tells her there is no reason to worry and they can manage the situation. Alantes takes Fuse to the mountain and shows him the path, but tells him that no person has come back wholly alive. He insists they can do it, and they enter. Meanwhile, in the city of the Blacks, the prince thinks about his last encounter with the Whites. On that said day, he couldn't let anyone know that he had met with the queen, so he quickly jumped into the ship and he left. However, since returning to the city, he has been unable to see the king. He wonders if it is because of the issue with Adele, but he can't but care less about meeting the king. He is more concerned about Iris. He feels she is carrying so much burden on her little shoulder, not only the burden of the Whites but the whole world, and he can't wait to help her. He continues to train with Valis, and he trains with so much velocity. Valis wonders why he is training that deeply and asks him if he has become more determined when he comes back from the White. He asks Valis about the Whites and Blacks, and Valis informs him that the king has declared that there will be no interaction between the Whites and the Blacks again. Hence, he shouldn't think about them. He asks Valis about balance and what Valis thinks about balance. Both the Whites and the Blacks live away from each other, but the king keeps wondering if that is balance. Valis admits that is a question that even the king can't answer. He hopes that if the entire world is filled with Blacks, they can get the balance they need, but the prince asks him again if that is balance. What does the future say if they eradicate entirely the Whites? Valis claims it isn't his responsibility to think about such a future, and they continue to train. Groza comes to meet them and announces that the king had told her to visit the mountain with the prince and fight against some monsters that have attacked, as he thinks the normal knights can't win. He goes with her, and on their way, she also talks about the Whites. They meet the monsters, but she falls into a dungeon. He jumps after, and they wonder how they will come out. Suddenly, a great monster comes out to attack her, and they don't know what to do. Meanwhile, the queen also finds out that monsters have attacked her, and she calls her team to fight while Alantes and Fuse are still walking on the lonely route. Just as Iris fights the monsters, she thinks about her responsibility. She says that she isn't carrying just the responsibility of the White. Since she became the Queen of the White, she has carried the responsibility of the entire balance of the world, the balance of the people, and she has to maintain the balance of the world. She isn't sure if balance means they will both keep fighting until eternity, and she barely knows what she should expect until the end of her tenure. The burden is much on her, and she doesn't think she can do it alone, so she remembers that the prince told her he would take it on her behalf. Later, in the Kingdom of White, they find out that the monsters of darkness have attacked them in large numbers. They go out to attack while Fuse and Allantes continue their journey to the Shining Droplets. Their way gets clustered, and Allantes uses his magic to create a route for them to pass. Unfortunately, it creates a hole in the mountain, and Fuse almost falls down the hole. Allantes drags him back to safety, but his sword falls into the hole. He appreciates Allantes, and they continue their journey. In the City of White, Iris finds it difficult to fight the monsters alone, and Shima is also weakened. When some monsters confront Shima and her mages, she finds it difficult to defeat them, and Iris has to attack from above. She tells them that they should all come together and say the chant for unity brings a large light to their city, releasing a shield that protects them. She tells them they are safe now, but it can't continue for long, so they must rest and get ready to fight again. Iris gets weak and collapses, so Shima leads her to her room and tells her to rest for a while. In the forest, Fuse and Allantes see a place around that looks weird, and Allantes goes to attack it. He uses his power and defeats it, which makes Fuse shocked that he could use that much power without the runes. He tells Fuse that he couldn't have attacked without the runes, and he had taken some of the runes along when they were going. He shows him where he has kept the runes, and Fuse tells him that he is one of the best, and he knows no warrior is better than him in the kingdom. They continue their journey, and they almost get to their destination. They see a closed entrance to the place, and Allantes destroys the entrance and enters into the place. They see the stream of shining droplets, and Fuse runs to get the droplets, but Allantes stops him and tells him that the place is actually very acidic, and it would destroy anything that enters into it. He throws a stone into it, and they see as the stone returns up and breaks into pieces. He tells Fuse that they should return and re-strategize, but Fuse refuses. Even if he dies, he will ensure he gets the droplets for Iris. He is sure the kingdom may have been under attack now, and he doesn't have time to waste. He walks into the acidic water and takes the droplets. On the other hand, Rosa helps the prince in destroying the monster. He appreciates her, and they return to find their way to the kingdom's top. On their way, she asks him if he thinks they won't be able to revisit the White and says she enjoys their company. She claims she doesn't know what the king is thinking, but none of them can go against the king. She tells him she has gotten some fish recently and wants to eat, so she asks if he will join her. He agrees to join her, and they go to her house. In the house, she appreciates him for joining and goes to meet him. She holds his hands and tells him that she knows he has a very great intention for the kingdom and she wants to support him. Also, since the day she had met him, she had adored him, although she also knew that he wants to be with Iris, the Queen of Light, and he likes her. She starts tearing up, and she runs away from there. On her way out, she tells him she will remain very supportive of him, no matter who he decides to be with. Eventually, Fuse and Allantes return to the White Kingdom and take the shining droplets to the Queen. They use it on her, and she instantly becomes healed. Shiwa tells Fuse of what had happened when he was away, and he tells her he has heard from the knights. She tells him they don't know how long the shield will hold and must be prepared. When Iris recovers, she goes to pray, and she remembers the promise the prince made to her. She hopes that she will be able to lead the path of light with the prince. As she prays, Fuse comes to her and interferes with her. He sees her praying fervently and asks her not to tire herself out by praying too much. He tells her that their battle with the Kingdom of Blacks is drawing in and they need all her energy. In appreciation, she apologizes for always giving them issues. She appreciates him for the shining droplets, but he tells her that she doesn't have to worry as it is his official duty as the Knight Commander. She also complains that she has always depended on him and his sister, and she doesn't know what she could have done without them, but Fuse pledges to her that his entire family will serve her till the end of the day. He leaves to drill his knights in anticipation of the battle. On this day, the prince wakes up feeling awkward. He goes outside the city, and he hears a merchant talking about how that day is the final battle against the whites. The merchant advises everyone that they should at least enjoy themselves before the battle, because if they intend actually to enjoy after the battle, they may not enjoy again. When the merchant notices the prince, he wonders why the prince wasn't invited to that kind of battle. He asks the prince if he has rebelled, and the prince says and he wonders why both the prince and Grossa weren't invited. Some other kids come to meet the prince and ask him what he thinks about the battle. They claim their mother has said they have to win because the floating island of the white has stopped their clothes from dying as fast as possible, so their parents have said they will win. They ask the prince if he also thinks they will win, and he says yes. Suddenly, a guard comes there and asks for the prince. When the prince asks what he has come for, he tells the prince that he was sent to call him, and the prince goes with him, and they pass the front of Grossa. Just before the war begins, Fuse and Shima ask Theo what he will do if the war doesn't end in their favor. He says he will run for safety by jumping into the river using magic. They tell him that should be his last resort, and before that, he should find a safe place to hide. He tells them he will protect himself and also advises them to run if they think the war is getting difficult for them. Fuse brags that he can't lose, and even if he has to keep fighting, no matter what, he will keep fighting. Theo reminds him that if he has to keep fighting, no matter what, it means he is fighting alone, and if that is the case, he should run. Fuse tells his brother that as long as they have Iris by their side, they can't lose. He also promises himself that even if he has to lose his last drop of blood, he will protect Iris. The war eventually begins, and Fuse gathers the knights, and Shiwa gathers the mages, and Iris goes to confront the King of Darkness. The King of Darkness tells her that no matter how much she tries, she can't overcome him. He isn't like the light that thins and struggles to cover, then eventually wears away. He is darkness. He keeps growing large and large until he succeeds and gets what he wants. Hence, she will get tired of the war and resign to the fate. She refuses a fate that doesn't belong to her. She tells him that she is protecting the balance of the world, and she will do that even if it takes away her entire life. In the Kingdom of the White, the dark monsters attack the kids and women, and the Knights of the White try to defend them. When they protect the women and tell them to run into the palace, darkness starts covering everywhere. Darkness takes over one of their knights, and he tries to attack his people, but another knight kills him and takes the people to safety. Theo hides behind the tree and watches the entire fight. One of the dark monsters flies over him, and he hides until the monster leaves. However, when the monster leaves, he looks at the kingdom and sees that everyone is fighting. None of them is safe, and he doesn't want to just remain there without doing anything, so he uses his magic to destroy the monster. Darkness starts covering almost every part of the Kingdom of White. Shima tries to remove the darkness using one of their united chants, but it doesn't work. Darkness takes over most of their mages, and she tries to use the Shield of Affection to protect them, but the shield breaks. In the sky, Iris keeps fighting the King of Darkness, and when she realizes that she may not win, she decides to use all the power of the Progenitor Rune together. The King of Darkness warns her against it, and that if it fails, she may lose all her people. But she reminds him that if she loses the fight, she will lose balance, and all her people will get destroyed regardless, so she tells him not to manipulate her. She continues and tries to attack him, but he attacks her, and she falls. In the Kingdom of White, Shima is frustrated. She screams at the Progenitor Rune, asking her if she won't protect them. Suddenly, Iris falls to the ground too, and they hold her. Fuse is also confronted by Valis, who calls him a coward and tells him he can't win. Valis uses the darkness to repeal Fuse completely and tells him he will remember him as the Commander Knight of Cowardly Acts. Shima asks Iris if there is any way they can protect their city, and she asks that they use another joint chant, Caned Flow. However, when they do it, it fails. The King of Darkness comes to tell them that they should give up and accept fate. Shima asks Iris if there is another way, and she says yes. Although risky, Shima tells her to go for it since she is the queen. She goes for her last resort while the Long Darkness brags about his great abilities. Angrily, Shima attacks him, and he attacks her in return and covers her with darkness, while Iris goes to the progenitor runes for her last cry for help. Just as the war continues, the knight takes the prince to where the king calls him. At one point, he sees several other knights around him, and he notices that the knights aren't there to protect him, but to do the will of the king by destroying him. He fights them, and he eventually reaches his destination, where he meets Adele. He isn't too shocked that Adele is alive because he had felt the way he had divided Adele into two was too fast and easy for someone who is a potential successor of the king. Adele asks if he is shocked, but he tells Adele that he isn't. He asks Adele why he had attacked the Queen of Light, and Adele wonders if that question should be directed to him or the prince. He says that killing the queen was the king's will and the will of all the people of darkness. The prince is surprised, and Adele asks why he has stopped him from doing the will of the king. He says even if the prince has stopped him, it didn't really stop the king's mission, as the attack had made Iris weak. He acknowledges that Iris is just a little girl, and even if she gets the powers of the runes, she is still a girl, and that particular attack has made her discouraged and scared of her ability. He claims that in a war like the one between the whites and blacks, where the two leaders are superior, the one who would win the battle is the person that gives up last. And considering how scared Iris had been with that attack, she will surely be the one who would give up first, and that will be the ticket of the blacks to win the fight. He says that the King of Darkness isn't stupid, and it is the person who has assumed that he is stupid who is stupid. He has a perfect plan to take the whole world, and the fight has started in the Kingdom of White. He informs the prince that no one knows the mind of the king, including Valis, who is actually fighting that war without knowing the real intention. He says that he is the only one with the best knowledge of the king, and that isn't a surprise since he has a great supply of darkness in him, just like the king, and he could even be the king's real son. He reveals the reason the king had removed the prince and Grossa from his war is because he knows they could get in bed with the whites, and they may be very difficult to control. The war is ongoing, and he has been responsible for killing the prince. The fight starts, and the prince first tries to hold back against Adele, but Adele keeps striking him so hard that the prince also has to fight him. Eventually, the prince stabs him, but Adele laughs. He admits that he may not be able to defeat the prince, which is why the major reason the king had sent him there is to delay the prince and not destroy him. The entire sky is filled with warriors from the blacks, and with no time wasted, the king will get the progenitor rune, and he will destroy the balance of things and, thereby, destroy the world. The entire world will be filled with blacks, and the king will be pleased. The prince wonders why the king wants to destroy the world. He starts to find his way to get to the Kingdom of Whites and fight with them, but some monsters attack him. Fortunately, Grossa comes to his rescue and paves the way for him to pass. He doesn't have wings to fly to the floating island, and as he thinks of what to do, so much light shines on him, and his back develops wings, and he flies to the Kingdom of White. While Valis fights against Fuse, Valis suddenly disappears, and Shima also escapes from the grasp of the King of Darkness. Iris goes to the progenitor runes, and she prays. She apologizes for not waiting for the prince, who consumes the runes, destroying the entire city. When the knight sees the overwhelming power of the runes, they realize she has self-destroyed. The prince also flies there, but it is too late. He stabs the King of Darkness, and he destroys it as they anticipate what could happen to the two kingdoms.